I'm serious. We ready? Wonderful. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out. Virtual audience, thank you for joining us. Nick, so good to see you again.
Likewise.
And Erica Ruth, right.
Lovely to see you as always.
So you may wonder why these two authors are appearing together, and the common thread is Wisconsin. Right. So Milwaukee.
Applause from the back. Thank you. Thank you.
Right.
We appreciate that.
Hey, right. So Erica Ruth, who has been writing historical mysteries set in various places many of us wish we could go, or some of us have actually been to, has written a new book, which is set in Wisconsin. Is it Sheboygan? Do I remember?
It's a fictional town of Sheboygan Bay.
Ah. Okay. So anyway, we're here to talk about that, as well as Vengeance in Venice, which continues the saga of her two characters, Redvers and Jane Wonderly. Right. Nick, on the other hand, is here with Peter Ash, and the book is set in Seattle. So the only reason he's Wisconsin is that's where he actually lives. But he tells me that he was born in Seattle. Is that true?
No.
Or you grew up in Seattle?
No, I spent 10 years in Seattle in my 20s. I spent my 20s in Seattle.
Okay, but now you're back.
Yeah, I was born in Madison, grew up in Milwaukee, spent 4 years in Omaha as a kid, moved back to Milwaukee, went to school in Michigan. That's the whole story. You know the whole story.
Okay.
And I did the
part.
reverse.
The part's really interesting for me is that I grew up north of Chicago in Winnetka, but the Midwest in the 1950s, when I was in high school, was a completely different world than the world that both of you inhabit. There are now people who commute from South Milwaukee to work in Chicago. When I was a kid, it was a day trip. It really was. There were winding roads along the lake, and you had to take a picnic and all like that.
Much prettier than the freeway, though.
I'm sure that's true, right? Anyway, Nick has written this astonishing book. I absolutely blown away by it. And the reason I say that is while it's fiction, it's very likely that what he's portraying in the book could actually happen. So it's kind of there could be dystopia here without any science fiction element at all. It's very real. And I want to know, how come you thought of it, you devil?
So this book started because I went through a phase where I called it being afraid of the future, between the war in Ukraine and then Israel and our current domestic political mess. And it doesn't matter which side you might be on. I think everybody pretty much agrees it's a mess. And then, like, I'm a big I'm a tech nerd, so I'm reading about AI, and I'm thinking about sort of all the changes that if they're right about what this is going to become, are going to wreak upon our society. And so I just sort of I started to really think about what world my son, who's 25, will inherit. And then, because I'm a writer, I just thought, well, what kind of person would actually be in a position to do something about that? And what might they choose to do, and how might they choose to do it? And that was sort of the seed of this story, was me trying to work out my own anxieties, I guess, about the state of the world.
Well, it's certainly kind of you to pass on all that anxiety to the rest of us now. I'm not kidding. This is really like a book of the lifetime. It's very hard to get an idea as good as this book. It doesn't come to every writer to create one, I think, that is this hard-hitting and plausible and terrifying.
Thank you, I think. I think
It
that's a compliment.
It was a compliment.
Okay.
No, it was definitely a compliment. And it takes Peter and his reporter girlfriend, June, and, of course, Lewis, right? Lewis, the backup guy, who had his own book. Was it 2 books ago?
The last one.
Book?
The last one
book,
was
right.
sort of the Lewis-centric. We get all the backstory. We get all the why Lewis is the way he is, why he became what he is, all that stuff.
So tell us the initiating incident.
So there's a tech reporter in Seattle named Caitlin Thorson, known as KT to her friends and enemies. And she returns home from dropping her daughter off at school, 13-year-old daughter, and finds a death threat shoved through her front door. And the death threat includes her daughter. And it's a little confusing. It's sort of words. It looks like a ransom note, right? Words taken out of magazines, and seems a little crazy, but somebody clearly knows where she lives and has known that she has gone to drop her daughter off. So she gets a little nervous, and she calls her old friend June Cassidy, and without telling KT, June reaches out to Peter, who's nearby, and says, "Hey, would you go keep an eye on my friend Caitlin?" And then,
why is Peter in Seattle?
well, Peter was actually there. This is backstory from from Burning Bright, the second book. This is they still own this land in eastern Washington, so it's about 4 hours from Seattle. So Peter can conveniently hop in his truck and go. So yeah.
So it would be reasonable for June to ask Peter to make a short drive, not from Wisconsin, but rather from eastern Washington.
Right. Well, and if he had driven from Wisconsin, he would be too late. So this is a plot point of convenience on my part.
Okay. Well, what else do you want to say?
Well, so I think it's easy to, because of the way I start to talk about this book, to sort of, this is not doom and gloom. There's lots of hope, especially at the end of this book. And it's still, I hope, kind of fast and fun and all those things. But I'm trying to talk about kind of real stuff. In all my books, I'm trying to talk about something that I'm curious about or concerned about or has otherwise kind of caught my attention. And this is, sort of along that same line.
Actually, in driving around the country, I have often had the same thought. And I don't want to say what it is because it'll be a huge spoiler, but you can hardly help sometimes in some places looking at and thinking, this could go bad in a hurry.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So, all right. Anyway, we have the squad on the case, and the question is, will they be able to head off the diabolical scheme? And we have a cult. We do have a cult.
We do. And actually, that was one of the fun things about this was the villain in this book is someone to whom I am the most sympathetic personally than any villain I've ever written. Like I really feel his pain and the reasons why he's doing this. And in a different world, I could have been him in a way. So it was a very interesting sort of access point into that kind of mindset. But I don't know, it was a lot of fun to write. This is one of those books that just sort of came out of me. It's like, some of them are really like, pulling teeth, and some of them just sort of emerge without a lot of effort. And this was one of those books. Right.
So writing a book and getting it published is a very long process. And as this book has emerged, it does seem like it has a political message, but it, when he wrote it, it didn't. And it's hard to, I think, oftentimes for readers to recognize the time gap between when a book was first thought of and when it published. It takes a year now, a minimum of a year to get a book submitted to a publisher and actually printed and before you. So if you're writing any kind of a thriller, the world events can take over in your book. I always, Daniel Silva is famous for turning his book in at the last possible second, and it's because his plots, when he was writing Gabriel as an actual intelligence agent now, he was always afraid that world events would overtake whatever he'd written and it would look ridiculous. So I think he made an intelligent switch to send Gabriel back to art, out of particularly now, if he were still, an Israeli super spy, it would be difficult.
Yeah, I mean, there are writers who kind of write those sort of world events books. I think that's really hard to do because you have to it has to both feel like something that can happen, but it's also, it can't be something that is happening or has happened, or you look like an idiot. Or
your book is dated because events have already overtaken whatever it was that you were writing about.
Right.
I know. I keep an eye on things when I travel. I've come up with a really brilliant plot for Brad Thor I recorded part of it, but I have some images for it. It's something that I bet like 3 people in the world actually know is true. And I can't wait. He'll be here in June again. And it'll be fun to tell him about it. You know, it really is fun to discover something like that. And since I'm not a writer, I just give it away, right?
Well, I do that too, though. Like there are stories that I see, right? Did you do this? Where I read something in the paper and I think, oh, this, I'll send this to Mark Graney, right? Or, oh, I'll send this to Brad Taylor. And that's one of the best things about what I do is the friendships I have with other writers, and to have those kinds of conversations.
No, it's true. So, Erica Ruth, you've been writing history, and all of a sudden you're writing a contemporary novel.
Yes.
How is that for you? Because, in history, events don't overtake you.
I mean, this is still, it makes me sad to say that it's set in the late 80s. So, I mean, it could be considered historical at this point, which is a real downer. It was because I don't want to deal with technology. I don't want to deal with the cell phones. I don't want to deal with any of the DNA stuff. So I really wanted to keep it in the late 80s. But it was kind of nice to take a break. And this one is really a lot about my childhood and growing up in a very small town with my dad as a police chief. And so some of the absolutely ridiculous things that happen in this book really happened in the town I grew up in. Like the police chief who took over after my dad, every year they would pull ditchweed, which is just like marijuana that grows in, it's not good weed. They would just pull ditchweed out of the ditches, and then like the officers would go burn it somewhere. But the police chief after my father threw it all in the back of his pickup truck and then went to do football practice at the high school gym, or at the high school, and then it all disappeared. And that really happened. So a lot of this was me working out things about my childhood.
Are you going to write more books in this vein? Is this the start of something, or is this a standalone? I should have asked you that.
No, that's fair. I just turned in the second one. So far there will be 2 in this series.
And who's going to be the lead character, the cop or the gossip columnist?
They're both. So the gossip columnist is, I don't think it's a surprise, a serial killer. The old lady is the serial killer. I watched a lot of Murder, She Wrote. What? Right? I watched a lot of Murder, She Wrote, and like that's too many dead bodies to just stumble across. So she's a serial killer, and then it's balanced by the young police detective who's a woman, and a lot of that is based on my own experiences as a police officer. I was never a detective, but I did not have a great time. So there's a lot of truth and like what I experienced in that as well.
Okay. So you also point out that the Chicago mafia, so to speak. I'm trying to remember what do we call it? It's not the outfit. Is it the outfit? I should know that. Anyway, how easy it is to be shipping stuff up and down the coast of Lake Michigan. We tend to think that drugs only come in across the ocean, but in point of fact, the Great Lakes can be a great shipping lane.
They sure can.
So our elderly serial killer, how old is she?
I don't think I ever say specifically. She's in her early 70s. She's loosely based on my aunt, who is not a serial killer, you guys. My aunt is not a serial killer. But my aunt is in her early 70s, and I adore her. And she is very fit and goes to the gym many times a week and walks 5 miles a day and lifts weights and is always like, how much can you squat? And I'm like, I don't know. And so like her ability to kill people and then dispose of them is loosely based on like what I think my Aunt Sandy could do.
Have you run this by your aunt?
She's read it. So.
No, I asked you that question because we have an Australian author, Sally Hepworth, coming to see us April 22nd. Sulari Gentle is coming with her too, which will really be fun. We have a whole string of Australian authors coming. But anyway, the book is called Mad Mabel, and in it, the protagonist is 81, and they go on and on about how, and I'm trying to think, how am I going to talk to her about this 81-year-old woman when I'm actually 5 years older? I know.
You don't look a day over 70.
Thank you. But I mean, it is kind of interesting that there's this whole thing about elder sleuths, and people who can actually still function in their 70s and 80s. And I think, how am I going to talk about that? Because this woman's life is over in her view. I mean, she's going to check out there at 81, and I'm thinking, Sally.
No.
I know. So
No.
I'll have to figure that out. So yours, I'm happy to hear, is much younger.
Not only younger, I think that the parameters have changed. Like, I think when I was growing up, it seemed like 40 was so old. Like Wilford Brimley looked so old in the 80s, and now Paul Rudd is the same age, and I think that that things have changed, and I think 70s and 80s, you're still living a lot of life. You still have many things you can do and accomplish.
Like taking you out to dinner.
Like exactly, or traveling the world.
Right. But no, it's kind of an interesting, perspective to be talking about somebody younger than you that is pictured as, on her way out rapidly.
It's very fair.
Unnerving. But anyway, yours has got the benefit of being a serial killer, which keeps her interested.
Yes.
Then,
Yes.
She has a reason to live.
Yeah. Right.
I also think that, and part of the reason I wrote her the way I did is because I think older women are very often overlooked. And so I think it is a window that they could take advantage of. If you wanted to bury a body in your rose garden, nobody's going to notice.
You have a comment you'd like to make?
Oh, I really love this book. I've always liked Erica's work. I love the Jane Wonderly books. It's just like a fresh breeze blows through the room. The voice is so great. I'm just a big fan, and I'm totally impressed.
Thank you.
So I just want to say that in front of as many people as I can.
Thank
and
you.
the garden's filling up too. That's part of the problem. Is that
I'm just trying not to get serial killed.
It's fair.
That's
Right.
all that's all it is.
no, and I really like the young police officer, the woman. And what's her name? She has a mic.
She does. It's funny, when I originally wrote I've rewritten this many times. When I originally wrote it, it was a man, and it was Mike Zanoni,
Okay.
who is a detective that used to work for my dad. And he was a fantastic detective and a great guy. But I decided it would be better to be a woman, and I wanted to keep the name. So poor Mike Zanoni, the real Mike Zanoni. Sorry.
Well, it's
Now he's a woman.
confusing at the beginning, but then you get used to it, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, and then Jane, you're still writing the Jane Wonderlies. That's so different.
It is. It's kind of a nice break between the two. You get to switch over to something that's completely different. And I really do still enjoy stepping into the Jane Wonderly world and the characters. And I'm editing book 8 right now, which is set in Spain. This one's Venice. So
Venice, right?
Yes.
And a sort of rundown palazzo.
Yes.
And a fancy party.
yes,
Jane and Redvers are there on their honeymoon,
theoretically, yeah,
and unfortunately run right into Jane's aunt.
always.
Right. And they go to the party, and a woman appears in a largely transparent dress with a snake wrapped around her.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. And then, unsurprisingly, and probably deservedly, she dies.
Yeah.
Yay.
I for this one, and for the next one, I like to read books based that are not set in that time period, but are about that time period. And I just happened to run across a book called The Palazzo, The Unfinished Palazzo, I think it was called. And it covered 3 different heiresses that owned the crumbling palazzo. Actually, this is real. It was nonfiction. In Venice, right on the Grand Canal. And the first heiress was so Luisa Casati, I think her name was. And she was very, very wealthy, and she was very, very eccentric. So the see-through dress and the wandering through the palazzos with a cheetah on a leash all actually happened. And so when I read about her, I was like, I don't have to go any further. This is my person that I will be modeling this character after.
Right. But why the snake?
She also had snakes. Also, I wanted to kill somebody with snake venom. So
Okay.
as you do, as one does.
As one does.
I like to
Right.
find different ways to kill people, and I was like, I haven't done that one yet.
Oh, okay. Anyway, so do we know any more about Redvers? He seems to have this kind of enigmatic background. We're not sure if he's an actual secret agent of the crown.
I think it comes out a little bit more. I think in this one, and then in the next one, we actually have his brother had an illegitimate child, and so he inherits a niece who is a handful, and is named after Nick's lovely wife.
Which fits. because Margaret is also a handful.
She's delightful. So I think we're learning more about Redvers's like family and dynamics and his background in these next two books.
Well, I mean, he's a useful person because Jane on her own can't keep solving mysteries and international puzzles. She has to have some sort. When the women's sleuth thing was so big in the 90s, every single one of them had a cop boyfriend or a brother or something. Well, because nobody had a power of arrest. I mean, even Kinsey couldn't arrest anybody, so there was always this kind of useful guy. Or maybe today it'd be a useful woman, doesn't matter. But for Jane, Redvers actually in the books has a
very
real
useful.
function.
He does. He's very useful.
Yeah, right,
And in my head, very handsome.
right. So where would you like to go? You've been, let's see, we started at the Mina House in Egypt, in Giza.
Yes.
And we've been to England. We have been to Constantinople.
Yes.
Back then, I guess it was Constantinople back then, wasn't it?
I think it was right at the switch. I
Right
think I
before
addressed that.
Istanbul?
Yeah.
Okay. We've been to Scotland,
Yes.
and now we're in Venice.
Venice, and then Spain, and then if there will be more, I would love to do somewhere in Greece, not Athens, but somewhere in Greece would be fun. And then I'm open to suggestions.
Okay.
I know.
About the Far East.
That would be fun. And I
Well,
would love
can-
to travel
I can
there.
recommend Singapore. We can talk.
Oh, yeah, that's a
Murder
good idea.
at Raffles. Right.
Yeah.
I know. You could spike the Singapore sling. What a
Ooh.
disappointment. I have to tell you that I was really geared up for a Singapore sling, right? A storied drink in the whole bit. It tastes like a Shirley Temple with gin. It's really awful. And it turns out it was developed for women because women weren't supposed to be drinking alcohol. So they made a sort of, this sort of fruit punch thing that they could put alcohol in so the women could sit there and drink Singapore slings. So I switched to the Straits Cup, which is basically sort of a Pim's number one, but an improvement. But the good thing about the long bar at Raffles is that they have bags of peanuts on the table, and you eat them and throw all the shells on the floor. They have to go through. And no, I'm serious. It takes you back to being a child, sort of, crunch, on the floor. Love it. So you could have poisoned peanuts.
Yeah, that would be a good time.
Not a bad thought.
Yeah.
All right. Right. So back to you. Right. Tell us more about what June and Louis, because they are such great backups for Peter.
So June and Louis do show up fairly quickly in this book, and it's one of the things that I have learned from reading comments is that June is as popular, if not more popular, than Peter.
And didn't we meet her in book 2?
Yeah.
She wasn't in the Drifter, if I remember.
No, that's what we meet Louis in the Drifter, and in
Right.
Burning Bright, the second book, that's the Peter meets June. And writing that love story was so much fun. And it's one of the downsides of having Peter and June is that Peter can't fall in love again because I'm not allowed to kill June.
No.
Like that would, yeah.
No.
So that would be the death of me, I think. But Louis is I don't know. Louis is so much fun to write because he really just sort of takes over and does exactly what he wants to do, and he has no constraints or restraints except for the fact that he loves his wife and he and Peter are good friends, and he and June have become good friends now too. So that's part of the fun of writing those. And then actually there's a 13-year-old girl who I didn't realize she was going to have such a large role, but was a whole bunch of fun to write. And I have a son, not a daughter, but my son was a teenager, and so there were plenty of teenage girls around. And I also have two friends who also have teenage daughters who I get to see from time to time, and just the sheer sort of ridiculousness and personality and just the amount of smack talk coming out of a 13-year-old girl is really impressive. And so it was a lot of fun to do that kind of thing.
You know, if you think about it, action hero books very often have, some guy that are mostly guys. Greg Hurwitz has a girl.
Joey, yeah.
Yeah, Joey, but mostly guys. And, they're Elvis Cole or they're Bubba. Anybody remember the early Dennis Lehanes?
Oh,
You remember
Yeah.
Bubba?
Rogowski.
Yeah, exactly. And David Rosenfeld has one in his books, whose name I can't quite remember. But there's always some Teflon guy, that is going to protect our hero, save our hero. And I wouldn't say that Peter needs all that, but Lewis is that kind of backup.
Well, I think about C.J. Box and so Joe Pickett and Nate Romanowski.
Right.
And one of the things that C.J. has done is that Joe is a good guy and Joe is a moral person, right? He's Dudley Do-Right. But sometimes a guy just needs to get killed, and that's what Nate's for, right? Because Nate doesn't believe in any of that stuff.
Right.
So it's that same. I think of that as sort of the most pure distillation of that kind of relationship that you're talking about.
Well, yeah, I think that's true. But also this means that you can put your hero into terrible situations, and we, the reader, don't have to panic because we know that Bubba or Elvis or whoever it is going to save the day. I thought Greg went kind of out of that zone when he went to New York in his most recent book, and left Joey behind. And so I worried about him the whole time.
Well, she's kind of his protector in a way, right? She's trying to drag him into kind of the human race,
Right.
which is I'm a big fan of Joey too. She's great.
She is, and frequently today people also need like a backup hacker. It's almost in a technological world, you almost always need a hacker of some kind.
Unless you're writing in the late 80s, in which case you can
Right.
avoid all that stuff.
Highly recommend.
So I've wondered many times, I skip over this, has anybody here actually been on the dark web? Does anybody even know how to get to the dark web? No. I have no idea how to do it. Do you know how to do it?
Do you know how to get there?
I've seen the instructions and they're not that hard. But I just, I don't know, I have a limited amount of time and I'm not really very interested in the internet. But I have this group of guys in my neighborhood who fully half of them are tech professionals. So programmers, they're, building apps and blah, blah, blah. And so, I have a great set of resources should that actually need to happen.
I'm just sort of curious to go and poke around, but I'm not sure that you can just safely go and poke around on the dark web without ugly consequences.
I'm just sort of afraid something's going to follow you back.
Well, that's,
Yeah.
no, I think, right. They probably, well, anyway. So that's Lewis's function to a great degree in the books. What about June? Did you decide to give her a larger role than, just being kind of his main squeeze?
Well, June's, June has a big role on the book that she shows up in, and she has a big role in the next book as well. And then it sort of ebbs and flows. And what I don't want is for all the books to be, the three main characters show up at this, right at the beginning, and I'm trying to kind of vary the mix a little bit. But for me, it's the most fun when they're all together bouncing off each other. The dialogue, just all of that stuff. But June, right? So Peter's kind of a lot, especially in the early books. And so if someone was going to be his partner, she really had to be a substantial person. And she pushes back against stuff all the time. She is not just sort of anything like a pushover. And again, my wife. But that's part of the, like, you need to have that balance of characters, right? And to have that relationship feel real, they have to both be like, otherwise she's a doormat, and then that doesn't make any sense. And it's just those are the women that are in my life, frankly, are strong, capable, smart women.
You know people like that?
I just a few.
Okay. So in that situation, children don't really enter in, do they?
Well, so this is interesting. So my first editor told me, very early on, the second book maybe, or we were talking about the third book. And she said, so where do you see Peter and June's relationship going? And, I said, well, it'd be interesting to see what would happen if they, had a kid. And she's like, absolutely not. Because then Peter, who is now, Peter becomes a jerk, right? Because he's putting his child at risk. He's,
She'd have to stay home if he was out.
Well, right, and
in
that's
Seattle.
no fun either. So, I sort of get that. But, I am jealous of, I would like to write those relationships. I think that would be a lot of fun to do. And I'm jealous of, again, C.J. Box, whose name comes up a lot with me, because I think he's a pretty fantastic writer. But those, watching those daughters sort of grow up is one of my favorite things about his work.
You may have to write a book that isn't about Peter and June and Louis.
I have several in mind. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I thought that might be true. Now, that's the same question for you in regard to Jane and Redvers, they're not going to be able to swan around the world and do all this stuff if they have children.
I know. I decided that they were not going to have children for that very reason, which is difficult for the 1920s. It's going to take a little bit more maneuvering because I think it was very much expected, but they have agreed not to. But it's also one of the reasons I decided to bring in a teenager so that they could have something of a relationship with a young person without having a child themselves.
Yeah, Brett Taylor's done that in his books. But I think, is she Afghan? I'm trying to remember. I think she is a young girl that they liberate from Afghanistan. Hopefully they can keep her. Present circumstances, maybe not. There it goes. See, I told you, crunch. And so that gives them a young person, but none of them is her actual parent.
Well, this is to me, this is the really interesting thing about writing something that's been going on for a long time is how do you grow this world? How do you stay true to what it started as, yet keep it evolving, keep these people growing and changing? And to me, it's absolutely, I'm thinking much more about that than I ever have. And it's a really interesting challenge. How do you think about that?
That is a really interesting, and I was actually just going to ask you how you think about it. Because I have been struggling with it. How do you keep it interesting, and keep them moving forward as a couple or as individuals,
Yeah. Well, there are consequences that kind of build up, right? So I think part of it is sort of how do readers see these people, and there's I don't want it to be every book is a puzzle and then you reset to the beginning again with every new book, that we all start from scratch. I want there to be consequences that roll in and continue to grow, and the moral universe gets murkier. I think that's also a way that you can make those choices more difficult for the characters. What I don't want to do is sort of raise the body count and first it's a there's a serial killer, and then there's a bomb gets dropped, and then there's a nuclear weapon, and then an asteroid hits the planet, right? That's there's a point at which it doesn't make any sense to kind of keep escalating. So you have to, I try to alternate sort of a bigger book with a bigger consequence, and then have something that's sort of a smaller, more personal story, again, to kind of keep mixing things up that way. But I don't mean it's super interesting, and I like you. I read a lot of series fiction, and I'm that's part of. I'm trying to learn how other writers have done this, and I'm talking to my this is book 9. Book 10 is in the can. It'll be out next year. My agent's talking to my editor about the next 3 books coming up, so it's going to be I'm going to be doing this for a while, and I really I love it. But I don't want to be bored, and I don't want my readers to be bored. And so I think about, sort of how to deepen things, really.
Yeah. I think for me, there's a built-in easy part of that for me, and that is I move it. It makes it a lot of extra work is to research each new location, but it does help me in that regards because I have a new location every single time to put them in a new place, a new world, a new culture to figure out.
Well, and that's, I mean, my books hop around as well, and what setting gives you too is another character, and it helps for me. Sometimes that helps me find the story. Right? Is that so? What are the stories that will happen in Seattle or in Memphis or in
And
India or
that's how I found quite a lot of my
Iceland.
stories. Is looking at literally Googling what happened in 1927 in this location, and then reading about it. I'm like, oh, that's really interesting that's what was happening, and then I use pieces and parts of it.
So I've always thought that one of Nick's greatest strengths was his opening, the way he sets things up. Burning Bright is one of the two best opening scenes I can ever remember. The other one I truly love is in Persuasion, which is a Jack Reacher book by Lee Child. And they are, I think, really, Burning Bright, your chase across the burning redwoods was just incredible.
Thank you.
And I wasn't sure you were ever going to top that until I read this book.
It is so good.
But, here's the thing, that a book has to have an ending as good as the beginning, or you, the reader, is really going to feel cheated. So when you have an opening scene as astonishing as Burning Bright, there's a lot of pressure to have an ending that's equally dynamic and really grabs people. Do you think you brought that off?
I hope so. I mean, I think the ending to this book certainly has a lot of.
Yeah, but this one has a quieter opening. It's the ending
that's
the
true.
punch.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
not.
yeah.
You didn't start out with some astonishing, race across burning trees and then arrive at the end.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think a lot about endings, but I don't plan them. I just sort of I'm someone who writes organically, which is a nicer way to say that I write by the seat of my pants. So I don't write a plot. I just sort of start at the beginning and I write to the end. And, I can't imagine sort of deciding ahead of time what the ending would be because I don't really know what the stops are along the way. And so I'm just sort of, the story is, moving the way it moves. And the goal at a certain point, I'm like, oh, I have to figure out what's going to happen at the end. And I'm all, I don't know if this is how you, but I'll be 50 pages from the end. I'll be at 80 or 90,000 words, and I'm like, okay, how are they going to get out of this, right? How is this going to get figured out? And I think maybe the suspense that I am having translates to the suspense that the readers have, just because I'm sort of putting that tension into the book.
So if you write that way, doesn't that involve generally a fair amount of rewriting to make it all flow once you finally figured out what the story is?
Yes and no. I mean, I kind of rewrite as I go. So I will, when I'm starting, I try to just sort of, write 4 or 5 chapters and just sort of, I start with sort of a scene. I start with a circumstance, and I just sort of let that play out until it turns into the next thing. And then I'll go back to the beginning and I'll sort of clean it up and tune it up and, this dialogue's not so good, or, oh, that's interesting. I need to play with this. And I just sort of keep doing that again and again. And I my goal is about 6 pages a day. And at the beginning of the day, I go back to the previous 12 pages and I clean it up and I edit and, I need more tension here, or the scene takes too long, or this argument needs to be more, forceful or whatever. And I just sort of keep rolling forward. And I do, I'll have these ideas where, I have to go back and change this. But I've learned to just basically, hit the all caps key and tell myself what I'm going to go back and do, so I don't lose that momentum. And that the other thing is that half the time those are really stupid ideas. And so I don't go back and fix the thing that doesn't need to be fixed and then have to fix the fix. So there is a lot of rewriting, but I don't have to rebuild the plot.
Good. But I can imagine that sometimes that for some people that might actually happen, is that you get to the end and you recognize that, that it didn't it didn't flow that way naturally, and you'd have to go back and right. I hope that won't happen to you.
Well, it has happened. There was a book where my editor was like, no, this is you have, from here forward, none of that is good. And I had written it really quickly, and after having this conversation with her, I was like, she's absolutely right. So I basically chopped off my books are about 100,000 words. So I chopped off about 8,500 words at the end, and then I wrote another, 15,000 new words. So it's happened to me once, and it'll, now that we're talking about it will certainly happen to me again.
Now that I've jinxed him,
Yeah,
right? It's definitely
I'm
will
deeply
happen.
superstitious. But does that ever happen to you?
I mean, I write similarly, but I don't do any of the revision that you do up front. So I just write. I'm also a pantser. I do not have a plot or outline or any of that. I just will keep writing till the end. And then I set it aside for a couple of months and then write something else and then come back and then I go in and do my revisions because I find I'm a lot less precious about what I've written. And then going back and changing things and reworking things is a lot easier for me because it feels like somebody else wrote it.
Well, I like
You're
that
editing
idea.
somebody
Thank you.
else's
I like
work.
that idea.
Yeah, it kind of feels like it.
Yeah,
It's, yeah.
that's smart.
That's a really interesting idea. But of course, it also helps if you have other things you can work on
Yes. Right.
while you're letting it sit.
Yes.
But this is what writers talk about when we're, having cocktails at the bar. It's we just want to know, like, is the way that I work as crazy as the way that you work? Or,
Yes.
You know what? It's not transferable. It always comes up. Almost every event we do, somebody will ask about what's your writing process. And the truth is, it's completely non-transferable. It only works for that one person. It will not help you write a different book, a book of your own. And I often think that writers are very superstitious, and whatever process worked for their first book, they're never going to fuck with it because, it could just all go south. So, I think that people lock themselves into a creative process if it worked the first time and then, or whenever it worked, and then there you are.
yeah, I guess I used to really feel like that, and I have just become less precious about it all because I used to get very, kind of overwrought is maybe a kind way to say, just sort of, everything was way too important, and the deadline, I just would get really worked up, and I'm having a lot more fun now, and I have learned, I work more like you do now, having had these conversations with you, and having talked to, Don Bentley, who's a friend of mine, and Greg Hurwitz, kind of about, okay, what are the things that I can steal from these very talented writers, and so I am always trying to. I definitely have that sort of superstitious part of me that is deeply afraid that once I finish a book, I'll never write another one.
Well, I was thinking more along the lines of you'll probably never actually outline a book because that is so foreign to what actually works for you. If you tried to do it, you would probably freeze.
Well, the one time I did, I blew my deadline by 8 months.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was not good. So yeah.
Right.
I tried it once. I hated it. That book became a slog. And so it's not how I work.
Okay. So why don't we take questions from the audience? You now know that there will be more Peter Ash. There will be at least one more Jane Wonderly and a sequel to the aging serial killer in Wisconsin. So that's all good news, right? Why don't you ask for questions, and then would you repeat them for the microphone? For the camera.
Got it. Yes, sir.
So how do you write a believable fight scene? Do you interview people who know how to fight, or are you just a really bad dude?
The question is, how do I know to write a good fight scene? Do I ask people, or am I just a really bad dude? I'm not a particularly bad dude.
I'm sorry I laughed so hard at that.
I'm a physical guy, right? I was a carpenter and a cabinet maker and a remodeler, and I think part of it is just I think a lot about the physicality of it. But I don't really like the fight scenes where it's like he did this move and that move and all the kung fu stuff. Like I want it to be very simple and very telegraphic, and to be very clear, right? So it's always more of a street fight, right? There's no fisticuffs involved. There's no kung fu. It's more like an elbow to the temple. And so I just keep it simple. That's kind of the way I think about it. So how about you? There's a little bit of that in your work. Yeah.
Is there?
Yeah. I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking about Mina House and Jane at the end.
Oh yeah.
Uh-huh.
I guess I thought about. I really like tried to put myself in that situation and like what I would do. Like how would I physically react and how would I physically get myself out of this? And like that, I mean, I am not nearly as physical as you are, but I mean, I was in the military, and so I did learn some things.
And you were a cop. You actually are probably a badder dude than I am.
That's
I
fair.
think let's be clear. Let's be clear about that. Yeah.
What else you got?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, you were talking about kids, but doesn't Lewis and his wife have kids that you could?
Yeah. So the question is.
Kind of did in the Lewis book.
Right. So the question is that I was talking before about how Peter and June couldn't have kids, but Lewis has kids with his wife Dinah, or it's Dinah's. They're from his first marriage. Well, but Dinah is not a direct participant really. So it's and this is part of her relationship with Lewis is. And this is based on conversation I've had with guys in the military, which is that Lewis is who he is, and she knows who he is, and Lewis needs to go basically blow off steam in order to come back to the family, and she's okay with that. So that's kind of how I don't know. I can sort of get away with that. But there is one book, the last book, where really those kids are in peril in a pretty major way by the end, and it. I mean, I have a son. He's 25. He's not that vulnerable anymore. But like, I don't want those books to be that. It's okay to do it once, but I don't want it to have that to be a recurring feature.
Well, I guess I just meant that they could have a relationship.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's Charlie and Miles are the two boys, and so Charlie is older, and Charlie will help Peter on a remodeling project, so there's a little male bonding going on there, and Miles is kind of more of an artiste, and so he goes and hangs out with Peter's mom, who teaches art up in northern Wisconsin. So there are again, this is back to that sort of how do you deepen this world is you expand the web of relationships to keep things more interesting.
Yeah.
So there's a question in the back.
Yeah, I have a question. I think it's reasonable to assume that so many books into your careers, you guys have matured as authors. And I'm interested in how you feel like you've gotten better from your first novel to this one. And congratulations on your novel.
Thank you. Why don't you take that one?
Can you repeat that?
Oh yeah, the question is how because we have we're really writing these long running series now. Like how have we grown as writers? Is that the question? Yeah.
I think with any profession, as you get better as time goes on, you get better at how you do things. I'm just curious how you've gotten better at that.
I mean, I guess all I can say is I certainly hope that I have. I mean, that is always the goal is to be getting better with each book and with each new idea is to hopefully. And I've tried in the series to even push myself with like, well, let's try a more complicated structure. Let's try, and this new one is a dual POV, which I haven't done before. So I am always trying to push myself and like what I am able to do. One of the other things I wanted to do with this new one was I thought it was an interesting to see if I could write a sociopath that you still root for, like Patricia Highsmith did. And so that was like just like a fun goal, if you will, that I set for myself to see if I could do it. And so I think that's how I'm trying to always get better and move forward.
Yeah, I think authors will give themselves an assignment sometimes to be sort of like, all right, in this book I want to explore this thing. I want to try something different, or I want to, there was one that I remember. I was like trying to write this sort of braided narrative where we had these 3 points of view and we kept rotating through, which I had never done before and I've never done since. But I think you can't. I mean, if you don't get to this point without being fairly obsessed about sort of the craft of it, and I mean, I don't. Neither of us are really interested in resting on our laurels, such as they may or may not be, but. I mean, to me, that's the trying to get better at the craft is kind of the starting point, because we both started, right. The goal was to write a book good enough that somebody would want to publish it, right. And so now we've gotten to that point, and now it's okay. We want to write what's the better book? What's the next thing? But it's not a. I don't know. I don't think it's like a like the stock market thing, right? It's really more like, I'm trying this, and then another book I'm going to try that, and another book I'm going to try something else. So it really is about sort of expanding the range. Does that make sense?
How much pressure is there from your publisher, I assume, once you're into a series to keep writing another series, and you think, well, I want to write a standalone book. Is it easy to say to your publisher, I want time to do this different thing, or is there enormous pressure to keep Peter Ash going every year?
The question is, how much pressure is there from the publisher to sort of keep the series going? I don't know. Do you feel like you've got a lot of pressure from Kensington on Jane?
I honestly am always just happy that they're going to let me do more of them. So.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of my take. I'm just sort of happy to be here.
Yeah. Excited to be in this chair.
Yeah.
You have this new book set in a fictional town that resembles closely your hometown.
Yeah.
With fictional characters that resemble closely people that you knew.
Mm-hmm.
How have they received that?
They don't know about it.
It's a big secret.
Yeah. I can just see a whole nother storyline plot that these people kind of turn.
I don't think anyone, and I hope this is true of all of my characters, that I don't think anyone would recognize themselves. Because I do try, whenever I create a character, I try to take snippets of personality and like pieces. And when I use friends' names in books just for fun. But the characters are never reflective of who they are as a person. It's just like a fun, like, hey, I threw your name in here. So hopefully no one would recognize themselves.
Over the years, the general impression is from authors and all that even when they base a character on a person, the person never recognizes them, proving that we don't see ourselves the way other people see us is really.
Thinking of the police officer or the
Fair.
chief that left the truck. I would think they might recognize him.
Probably a storied incident in that small
Yeah.
town.
I mean, it is in the
whole
newspaper. It
high
was in the
school gym
newspapers.
Got blown on the on the ditchweed.
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 That's
So my
really
dad
a
always
thing?
called it. Yeah.
Yeah.
The opposite is true too, though. Is like people will say, "Oh, that character's based on me, right?" And I'm like, "No."
No.
But I get much more of that
Yeah.
than the other. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Mine is really more question as it is feedback. Thank you for writing about Peter Ash because it's connected me to, an imagination in a way of somebody is a badass. But, I love listening to audio and Stephen Mandel, your audio, your narrator is very good. And, he's when he loses jawhead, hey, come on, and he's got all the guns and things. And that connects, but yeah, June connects because she always, she's very popular because she supports it. And, you better come back to me, Marine. Get your job done. And that's, you started with this, after Iran, Afghanistan, and, there's a lot of PTSD. I live in, my wife and I have 44 years. We're both here from Jacksonville. We started at 2:30 a.m., I think yesterday. So, we're out here for you and baseball, and you've always introduced me to other authors like Horowitz. Hurwitz? Am I saying that right?
Yeah, Hurwitz.
Yeah, Greg. The Nowhere Man. And he's also not. He doesn't have. He tried a relationship, but he's not really good at it. And then you've introduced me to Erica, and serial killer, and oh yeah, that's fun. So, but you do have a basis, military, and your dad. And at one time, one of my first book places I went to was John Sanford, John Camp, and he, was from Miami, and he says, in any metropolitan town, there is an investigation going on with a serial killer anywhere, at any time. Yeah. So.
And Wisconsin's a great place for them.
Yeah, we've had some pretty famous ones. Yeah.
But thank you for making the adventure continue. But don't stop at 80, 90,000. If the Go to 120.
Oh my God.
Well, it's actually interesting because I do get pressure from my publisher to write shorter because they think people don't have the attention span, and I disagree.
The end of books.
Yeah.
You know, that's
Well, part of it is production costs.
No, yeah, paper's
You know,
expensive. You got to ship
costs-
it.
It
Yeah.
costs a lot
Yeah,
more
yeah.
money. They're harder to shelve. I've had
But it brings
Oh.
us to the next book, right?
Yeah. Well, so I don't know if I can. I'll just for the people watching online, I will just say that this gentleman was very complimentary of us both, and we appreciate it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
there was a hand behind you, wasn't there? Yeah.
So my question goes back earlier. Like, deciding to become a novelist to me is like, I'm going to become a brain surgeon tomorrow. And how do you were a police person, you were doing home inspections, and how do you decide tomorrow I'm going to become a novelist? Or what's the process?
The question is basically how.
Wait, and I had a second
Oh,
part.
oh boy, oh boy. It's a two-parter.
Have either of you ever closed Wolski's?
I have. The question first was, have you closed Wolski's? I have not closed Wolski. Have you?
Once,
All right.
once, and it almost killed me. So, for those watching, the question is: have we ever closed Wolski's? Wolski's is a semi-famous dive bar in Milwaukee, and every third bumper in the city
Yes.
has a sticker that says "I closed Wolski's."
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so
I
there's
don't
a-
have the. I don't have the bumper sticker.
No, and this was a long time ago when I did. So it's been around. This Wolski's has been there forever.
For forever.
Yeah.
We're both Milwaukee kids, so.
So then the first part of the question was like, you compared deciding to become a novelist like deciding to become a brain surgeon, and like how does that happen? How do people decide and then begin to carry it out? So how did that go for you?
It is my dream job. This is my absolute dream job, and I am so lucky that I get to do this full time. Like, I'm so lucky. When I was little, I wanted to be a novelist. I wanted to write books, but I never did. I never tried creative writing. Until I wrote Murder at the Mina House. I read a lot. I have always been an avid mystery reader. Like Nancy Drew was my entry drug. And after the military and after numerous other jobs, I actually became a reviewer of mysteries and crime fiction, and I did that for about 5 or 6 years. And at the time, I was reading about 150 books a year. And yeah, I do not do that anymore. And I finally got the courage because I started going to conferences and I started networking with people like Nick and other writer friends of mine. And I finally just got the courage to sit down and give it a try.
Got one more quick. Any between the two of you, anybody?
Oh, I wanted to be a writer since I was a kid. I'm a huge reader. I think all writers start as huge readers. And I just started, I took when I was a senior in high school, I took a short story class at the university because I'd already taken all the English classes. And I just started with these small little things, and they sort of, at a certain point, you're like, okay, I feel like I can, I can put a scene together, and and then suddenly it's, well, what if this was longer? And it really is, I guess you go to medical school one day at a time, and that's kind of how you become a writer. Two is you just sort of, wow, well, I wonder if I could do this. And you also, my guess is you share this too. Like, I just have these stories in my head. Like, I have a restless mind, and that's how it interacts with the world. And it's also how, I think that's how humans are wired. We've been telling stories, since we had language. That's what we wanted to know why the sun went across the sky, so we invented a chariot, to carry it, with horses. Like that, we have these elaborate tales of gods and their misdeeds and their feuds, and I wonder where all that comes from, right? So we've been doing this as a species for a very long time.
Yeah. And I was writing dialogue in my head well before I even ever thought about putting pen to paper. And I didn't realize that other people didn't necessarily do that.
Weren't you just narrating yourself, though?
Kind of.
Erica Ruth walks down the hall. She's looking good in her jumpsuit.
And there were musical numbers.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. Do either of you something coming to, streaming or movie series?
Keep your fingers crossed for all of us.
Yeah.
Is that an agent or somebody comes to you?
Well, about 8 months ago, the option expired for the Peter Ash books. So we had a deal with Netflix. The showrunners had written a pilot episode. Netflix had asked for a second episode to be written, and then the sort of the series Bible, which is sort of how that season is going to go and what's the transition to the next season. And we were so very close, and it did not happen. But so now the rights are mine again, and I got an email yesterday, maybe the day before yesterday. Hey, are the rights still available? So, that conversation is going to go on. My TV guy, you've probably had this conversation too. It's like the everything changes in Hollywood every 9 months. It's all new people, so you can just keep trying.
And they pay you option money, so it's basically free money. Well, they buy it for a term.
Right. For they try to figure it out.
Right. So for many writers, they might have 12, 13 options, but that's an enormous amount of supplemental money.
Yeah.
But often nothing ever comes of it.
Yeah. Almost never.
Yeah.
Frankly.
I will
It's
say that
also-
Lorraine just went out on submission a couple of weeks ago.
It's also, if you have a series, they only have to offer you one option. And so that's one reason more writers are writing standalones, because then every book is an option. So there's some pressure in that sense of not writing a series.
Yeah, I only have one piece of IP to sell. That's Peter Ash. I can't sell it one book separately. It's the whole series. That's just the way it works.
Yes, sir.
I'm just wondering, Nick, are you pretty good at signing Greg Hurwitz's name now, or you get that often?
No, am I signing Greg Hurwitz's name?
I just thought you might be able to, get a mistake and get to sign his books for him.
I would love to. I would like to prank Greg in just exactly that way.
Bob Craze told me one time I was at Greg Hurwitz signing, and he was leaving early. I had to leave early before Greg could sign my book. And Bob said, well, I can sign it for you, and it would be worth more then. The other question I had was, Peter Ash, how did you come up with his name?
Oh, I all names are important to me. I spend probably way too much time on names. And so he was sort of the nameless guy for a little while, and I kept sort of cycling through, and I do it sort of by feel, but the explanation I give after the fact is that St. Peter is the guy at the pearly gates who decides whether you're going to heaven or hell, and Ash is the byproduct of a great conflagration, and that is kind of who Peter is, as he's the byproduct of his war. So it sounds really good when I tell it like that. But I work so much just by feel and intuition. So.
Well, I would like to thank all of you, not just for coming tonight, but both Erica, Ruth, and this guy here, his name?
Nick,
thank you. I really am 85. I know, and every once in a while it goes. Have signed their first books for us, and that only works because you came out to support them. If I made a list of all the authors who signed their first books here, you'd be astonished. But it works because you guys will turn out to meet a new writer, and then here you are, umpteen books later. But it really matters, doesn't it, how a first book goes?
It does. And I mean, what matters is this. What matters is I think what you do is so extraordinary that if you're a Phoenix or Scottsdale native, you may not really understand what an amazing place this is. You might take it for granted, but there's really no other place like this in the country. And it's always if I could go one place for a book, this is the place that I would go, and I'm grateful for it.
Same.
Well, it's my pleasure. Actually, sorry, I don't know why my voice is going. Nick's first book, his publisher, you probably remember this, wasn't entirely sure what they wanted to do with it. And so I got a call one day from his publisher saying, we have this new guy, and we think it's a good book. We think it's going to go well. So we want you to have him there, because maybe it won't. It's true. It's a real conversation. And I said, okay. And so there we were with the Drifter. Remember that? Yeah. So we did Nick's very first ever book event, and we've been lucky enough to do all of them since. Erica Ruth, I particularly like the Mina House because I've stayed there. Now it's a Marriott, I'm sad to say. It's not, it really is. But it's still got one of the great locations because from the balconies of the rooms, the pyramids are like right in front of you. There are a lot of reasons to agree to do first novels, but I have faith in all of you that, that you will, some of you anyway, will turn out and buy the book and support it. And since we're a not-for-profit bookstore, I don't actually care if it's a success or not, because, I'm here for the fun. I really am, I'm 36 years now. I know, it's amazing, right? But really, seriously, it's thanks to all of you. So thank you for coming tonight, and thank you every time you come to meet a new author. It really means so much to them.
It really does. Thanks for being here.
You bet. So, I have a book to give away. PK, did we do numbers tonight? Thank you. And I say that those numbers sound low because most of our book sales go out the back. Did any of you look at the packing materials there when you came through the parking lot? Isn't that frightening? That's a month's worth. I know. I can hardly believe it sometimes when I see. It was tiny, wasn't it? Because it was just a hobby. It was just something I was doing for fun. Actually, I did it because my mother was a mystery writer, and reader, and I thought it was something we could do together. In fact, when my husband and I built the original bookshelves for the original bookstore, none of them were higher than my mother could reach. I'm really serious. I know it was true. And eventually I had to, hire taller men in order to do that. No, it's really been so much fun. Now, have you read Des yet?
Yeah, I got to blurb his first book,
Right.
Which I really like.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, this one is supposed to be absolutely fabulous, and he's going to come and see us. But this is a reinvention. This is somebody who looked like was going to have an absolutely amazing career under his real name, and he ran into an editor that was like a buzzsaw. And yes, it was a tragic story, and he just got blown away. And I thought, well, I'll never see him again. I really like him, and I loved his books. And then one day, out of the blue, I got that arc from the publisher, advanced reading copy from the publisher, and they didn't want to tell me who it was, but I figured it out. Well, because they gave a bit of a bio in his location, and I knew it had to be him. Anyway, this series is under Serious Film Option. It's an action series. I love Des. I mean, think about it. I don't know another character quite like him.
He's very charming. I haven't read this one, but the first one is, you just sort of want to fall into it, and his. Just the whole the Desness of Des Limerick is that's the character's name is Des Limerick. It's like you just want to be his friend.
Yeah, he's a gatekeeper, which means that he's constantly opening up opportunities, and he seems to be indestructible. He doesn't even have a backup guy because nobody can take him out. Anyway, I'm going to give away, because this is a duplicate of my own advanced reading copy, otherwise I wouldn't share it with you. I'm going to read it, and he's coming to see us, I'm trying to remember, June 1st, end of May, whatever it is. But I'm really hopeful that this will turn into a series, because if anybody deserves to have something wonderful happen to him, it's this author. What? June 3rd. Thank you, Patrick. Right. I'm really excited about it. So since you blurbed the book, pick a number between 1 and 8, and we will give this to. It's called Storm Warning.
Lucky's number 7.
Oh, how handy. I don't even have to get up. Thank you very much. And that is what, the third book?
I think so.
I think it's the third
think so.
book. But again, each of them is basically a standalone with this one character. Maybe it's the fourth now that I think about it. Anyway. No, but if you read that, you will want to read the other two. But no, they are complete stories, and he doesn't have he doesn't have that many characters. He's sort of more like Reacher, and then he doesn't
Yeah.
really relate.
Yeah.
Yeah, is personal.
Yeah. Not a lot of relationships.
No,
Yeah.
no. Anyway, if you all would be kind enough to move the furniture, put the chairs over there, and you can line up and get your books signed. The authors will stay here at this table. What?
Oh, yes.